Welcome to the Blonde Runner podcast with Coach Laura Erickson, where she shares her healthy living tips as a running and triathlon coach and mother of 4.
Hello.
Hi, Laura.
Hi, I'm glad to connect. It's always a little tricky with technical stuff, huh?
Oh, good. And there's all these new platforms, all these different ones to try out. It's great.
Yeah. So I'm happy to talk to you again. I'm so thankful that you're willing to come and be interviewed again. I know we've done this a few times before, but here we are again.
Yeah.
So
I don't know that we've done it on this platform before. So cool that you found this, or just like connecting through your channel as opposed to just Lily Trotters.
yeah, absolutely. So there are a lot of different platforms. This seems to be fairly easy to use, so I really like it. But well, I really loved what you said on the last interview that I saw for you, and I just love this concept of eating to fuel what you do. So, just for those that are listening in that maybe they don't know about you, kind of introduce yourself a little bit, tell about you, and you don't have to be shy. You are a very good athlete. You're an ultra runner. Tell them about you.
About me. I'm learning how to do this synopsis as I've gotten older. I think that's actually easier to talk about the younger version of myself than it was to talk about myself as I was going through it. Like there's almost like this distance or space between a little bit. But quickly, I found ultra running in my early 20s. I was running with a group of men. I call them the Scots, Scott Jurek and Scott. Community in the early 2000s, and then through a long relationship with the outdoor industry through a couple of different brands and the Conservation Alliance, a nonprofit, I was able to, I guess, afford my running lifestyle until I decided to make a go of doing it on my own. And I just kind of describe it as hustling. Like, how was I going to pay the bills with running as the means? And it's been an amazing journey. I'm 13 years actually I have 2 LLCs and lots of great running opportunities around the globe. Running's been my lens to explore the world, and now it's using it a little bit more close to home. I live in Bellingham, Washington. I was able to buy a house just about a year ago with my dog. I say I buy the house for the dog. She just lets me live there.
Yeah, and, I remember that.
Yeah,
you were living the van life before that. So
yeah, for 2 years. Yeah, and right now you find me in the thick of the Chuck on a 50K production. So we're just about a month out from race day. So it's full on at this point.
Busy stuff. Busy. And you I know you wrote a book as well on ultra running, or doing your first ultra, which is actually, I have it. I love it. It's a great book. And so those listening in will definitely have some resources for you to go find that. But I did want to talk about this concept of like nutrition and women and being able to like fuel ourselves in this sport. What advice would you give? What thoughts do you have on that?
Oh man. So many have evolved over the years, right? Like learning different things along the way. My perspective now as a 45-year-old that's been running for I'm into my 3rd decade now. I was definitely very early on influenced by the light is fast and, trying to be as light as possible, weight management type thing. And if I could go back and tell that college athlete something, it would be fuel as much as you can, like enjoy, like fueling your body to enable it to do even more of what it's capable of. Like if you're taking calories away from it or not giving it the calories it needs, it's actually limiting what you're able to do for performance. And that those light bouts, those times when you do get really light, they're short-lived, and then it's usually followed by injury. So that's like in hindsight now, but also like I think there's like opportunity for people to hear from somebody that's been through it, and then and not take themselves down that track if they can, and kind of cancel out that, I hate the word cancel in that sense, but like get rid of that language around how diet and athleticism, like I just don't feel like those two words should even go together. Like if you move your body and you fuel your body, it will be the shape it needs to be to do the things you want it to do. And just kind of keep it at that. And any kind of restriction on what you put in your body, as long as it works, right? Like I'm not talking about people that have maybe some intolerances or bowel disease or something that disables that ability to eat whatever you want whenever you want kind of mentality. I'm just putting restrictions for the sake of trying to count calories or something like that. That doesn't do match with somebody that's moving their body, as far as that's kind of, I guess, the way I try and look at it.
Yeah, I think sometimes we have a hard time just embracing who we are, different sizes, and just how we are, just the way we are. And we do think that, I think that's just really rampant, this idea that like cutting calories and just being light and all that. I remember reading something Ryan Hall put out, and he says, even when, of course, right now he's he does bodybuilding. He's very thick compared to what he looked like when he was running marathons, but he was super thin and light. And he said his fastest times weren't when he was the lightest. It was when he was relatively strong for his size. So I know with my athletes, I try to make them durable. That's kind of how I like to think. You need to eat, you need to be strong, but cutting calories to the point where you do end up injured. I have had, I think eating disorders can be a real struggle for people. I've had friends with this, that it leads to injury because they're just not getting enough calories, even though they're burning thousands of calories, even in a day with all the running they do. They just struggle. I think they're so afraid of gaining weight, and I think it's much more prominent with women too. And how can we get them to embrace their body as is, right? It's definitely a trick. So
the mental shift I had to make, because I used to have people make fun of the size of my quads, and I am a long, lean, limby person, like just build by nature. But the size of my legs relative to the rest of my body is, someone might say, disproportionate. And it took me, I tried to fit into skinny jeans and the whole thing, and it was kind of like a, whatever, call it an ego hit, or it just kind of made me feel uncomfortable in my own body, until I was able to say, these are the things that allow me to power myself up hills. Like if this is the shape my body needs to be to have those awesome runs in the mountains, so be it. Like forget skinny jeans. Like I want to be able to run up mountains. But it's a huge mental shift, especially when there is those, like, even if they're just like jokey or silly, like a lot of, we take it personally a lot of times, unfortunately.
And it's probably depends on what we think of ourselves. And so, like, how do we create a mindset that embraces us the way we are? I know for me, I'm a little bit older than you, and I've went through menopause, and so like my body fat composition has changed, whether I like it or not. I'm still able to fuel up mountains and do the things I do, but it just leads you to question, like, how can I change things? And I've discovered that I just have to embrace that my body will change as I age, and any woman, like it or not, your body will change as you age. But I'm still very healthy. I still, but I'm carrying more fat on my body than I'm used to. And so, but if it's kind of like the skinny jean concept, right? If I just keep trying to make my body a certain way, it's not probably going to happen. And the sooner I just embrace what I am now, the happier I'll probably be, because I can still get myself up the mountains. And I hear your pain, because I do triathlon too, so cycling, when I started cycling, my quads grew. You can't fit into jeans. Like your core is big, but then your waist is really small, and you feel like odd. You can't, but like you said, I think if our mindset is, look what my body allows me to do. I just love it. I love it. And how can we get our younger version self, like, it took us like how many years to learn that, right? How can we, maybe if you hear it listening in and you're young and you're thinking, but then, like, how do we get people to make that shift in their mind? And like, really, the industry, how do you think?
Oh, it's a good one, right? I think there is more openness to it. The messaging is out there. There's like even just talking about like, and I hear all these things about people making fun of, but what am I trying to say? Like I've heard a lot of jokes about like body positivity, and I'm like, that's so unfortunate. Like, why would we even make a joke about that? But
Mm-hmm.
like, it's just like we put language on things, and then somebody has to go and turn on it or turn it on its head. So I try not to get too caught up in, I guess, trends, if you will.
Yeah.
But it really comes back just to the individual. I feel like everybody's going to get a message in a different way. Like I feel when I was in college and just out of when I was really early in my ultra running career, I had the amazing opportunity to work with Dr. Emily Cooper of Seattle Sports Medicine. And she put me on a treadmill and tested my VO2 max and just looked at me and said, you know what? The more you eat, the more you can run. And those were the words I needed to hear then. And then to deal with the body image stuff, it was this other message of, but these are the, like, whatever this looks like is what gets me to do these amazing things that bring me so much joy. But
Mm-hmm.
it, like, that's what worked for me. But everybody's going to come at it and from different stories, from different backgrounds, what's influencing that. And I guess my hope is what's influencing that is what people are seeing now is very different than what we grew up with
Mm-hmm.
in terms of like all body sizes, like in marketing, like people like, and even though I work with Patagonia and our website has taken a huge shift in terms of representing the clothing on all different body types. I love clicking through our website now and seeing things that don't look like me, and that it like, 'cause my body type was like, it was easy for me to shop on that website.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's easy for like a lot of people to shop on that website because you can visualize yourself in the clothing. I think those kind of moves are really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it is so interesting, the whole body shaming thing. And then, there's, I think with the mindset, just like with my life coaching and stuff, I found that, like you said, everybody's going to come at it at a different angle. But it's interesting, what we hear isn't always what we believe, but what makes us believe what someone is saying accurate or inaccurately. And I think that's where, like, your mind set changed. Maybe it was who said something to you. You obviously had a lot of value in what she said, and that allowed you to believe it. Um, but how can we come to that understanding? And I think some of it is like experience. Like as when I heard Ryan say that, I was like, good, because my body isn't the sizing it was, or not that I'm a lot bigger, but you just have to realize that you can still do well even when things change, or when, yeah, and maybe even better, like you said, like the more I eat, the more I get to do what I want. And then of course eating healthy. I mean, there's certainly that balance between getting the right calories, but not being, I did a lecture recently and I shared with them, I like pizza and all that stuff. And I think they were surprised because, you're having some coach telling you you can you can have pizza, and I'm just being real because I really do. And it's not bad. It's not full. It's just balance. It's not every meal. And I would guess that maybe I would hope that would make me feel better too, is if you have some of those, maybe foods that we deem as not healthy sometimes.
Oh, well, that was something I had to, another, I guess, way I put wording around it was especially traveling as much as I did. Like if I had limitations on what I could eat, like I had to prioritize quantity over, say, quality, or just, but not put restrictions on. If I needed to eat out of a gas station vending machine, like I needed to eat. And like if I had any rules about, well, that Snickers bar is bad for me, but if that's the only calories I can get, like I needed to eat those calories is how I shifted my mental approach to fueling. And I will try
Mm-hmm.
I view as quality, which to me is whole foods. If I picture where that's the stuff I want to eat and fuel my body with. So um, yeah, I guess with all these messages we tell for yourself. And the one thing I was thinking when you were talking about how do you believe it is what I try and really like hone in on for myself, and then also help clients figure out is how to figure out when something resonates. And for me, I feel it behind my sternum. So in that case, when someone says like, Krissy, the more you eat, the more you can run. And it just kind of clocks me right in the chest. like,
Mm.
oh, that feels right.
Mm.
That's when I know the messaging. So maybe it's the person, but maybe like hopefully more so it's like something that's coming internally.
She touched on something you want to do. You
Mm-hmm.
you know, and discover what, you knew what you wanted. I think so many times people don't really know what they want, but if you know what you want, and then you're told how that can happen, I think that
Mm-hmm.
probably hits you behind the sternum, like you said.
Mm-hmm. And hopefully that can happen in a way that you can trust that's sustainable for you, right? Like somebody might have told me, yeah, you can run, or maybe that's the difference. You can run those distances really fast if you're 10 pounds lighter. I want to believe that wouldn't have resonated for me. Like that would have been like, oh, I'm doing what they told me to do, versus you like fueling yourself, that and running long miles, like that all goes together. That makes more sense in my mind. Does that does the difference make sense, what I'm trying to explain?
I think so, because I like to define it with my athletes is there's like a sweet spot. And I think that comes with running, and I think that comes with like cycling. Like you can get in too hard of a gear where you're pushing too many watts and it's not good. But if you get in a little lighter gear, you're pushing more watts and it feels like you're moving your legs faster, and you are, but you find it, there's a sweet spot, just like running, just like, and I for eating and balancing your exercise, because some people restrict so many calories they don't feel good, they don't. And I think timing, I think that this is what often you can't, that takes a little more expertise to figure out, is when should you eat what. I think you probably realize that, like with ultra running, there are certain foods that maybe work well for you and other foods that don't, but like you have to know when to fuel yourself in a race. Not what,
Mm-hmm.
when.
Oh, and
Yeah.
but also knowing that those are going to change as I've noticed as I've aged, like the things that I fueled with in my 20s shifted in my 30s and are changing. Well, my mileage is changing in my 40s, but yeah, all like just not saying that this is the one cure all be all, whatever, even just for yourself. Like you might see that it works for someone else. It might work for you for a little while, but then it might have to change again.
Mm-hmm. I think a good athlete is flexible. Not only like not only in a race atmosphere, but like throughout life, like you're saying. I like that you're saying this, because I think people listening in, if they're maybe in their 20s, they need to realize that you might need to embrace changes in how you do things over time, to you still can perform well. Your body does change, and you do things differently, and you learn from the things you did before. But nutrition, I think, is so individual anyway. And then if
It really is.
you have diet issues that cause things that change, your gut doesn't handle certain things, then and I even find that in a race, some races I don't stomach as much, and so I have to just kind of change as I go. I have an idea, things, but I have to be flexible. So definitely.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm so glad we're talking about this, because I think it's something that's a real problem still, and I honestly think 20 years from now it'll still be a problem. This thought of our body, and like accepting our body, and I think there are eating disorders in running and pretty much a lot of the sports, and learning how to kind of embrace what we are. I think it takes some more talking. I think we should talk about these things. I think it's good.
No, I agree. Yeah.
Well, I loved what you said. And so I'm grateful you talked about this more, because I just think it's so important to hear, because so many people just don't do enough. They don't eat enough when they run miles and miles and miles, and they're just eating like a bird, and it's just not. And then they just keep getting hurt, and injuries are really a hard thing. And I know you talked about your injuries, and it sounds like you've really done well now. What have you learned in retrospect? And maybe you can just tell everybody a little bit about what you went through recently, and then like how you've come out.
Oh, with my back last year.
Yeah, you're
Oh, that was I guess that's one thing I would offer is like, yes, you can go through and learn these lessons and then still have to learn them again. Like I am human, or we all are. And man, there was a couple times where I was like, dang it, didn't I learn this already? And we can still mess up. It's part of the deal. March this time last year, in the same kind of busy phase of putting on the Chuckin' at 50K, I also bought a house, moved out of my van, released the second edition of my book. And that all happened within, I think it was like a 3-week period, all told. And then I got the house, like the house was still in card, like everything from the mover showed up right before the race. So I got unpacked, had everything out of cardboard the day before I flew to Arizona. I guess that was April 5th to hike 200 miles of the Arizona Trail with 2 dear girlfriends. And it was in my mind, I was like, oh, just once I get to the trail, everything, life will chill out. Well, hiking 20 to 25 miles a day and flying there to do it after the month that I'd had leading up to was still another toll, maybe not as like much mentally, because all we had to do was eat, sleep, and walk.
Yeah.
But the physical toll on top of what I'd gone through up to that point. And then the straw that literally broke my back was that the house got broken into while I was away. And so coming home to that stressful situation, I found myself it was like a week after I got back. I couldn't get out of bed in the morning. And I've never said those words. Like, I'm sure I've said, oh, I'm so sore from running a race or whatever, but for an unknown reason, my body couldn't lever up. And I have not known pain like that, honestly, ever. And you and I did some chats during that, I remember. And I was also on Ginger Runner Live, choking back tears of like, this is scary, like to be in it and not know the way through. And when you're like fully right in the moment and trying to talk to people about it, that was like really learning moments for me, because I think that shows like the real story. Because if you're like just waiting to tell it in the aftermath, then like, yeah, then you've got all the hindsight with you. But to share that truly scary moment of here's how I got here and I don't know where it's going, man, if that's not life, like the reality of life, what injury or changing jobs or moving cities or anything.
Yeah, it was a lot at once. And it was a very real time when we talked about that, because it was obviously really a struggle. And I think that there are so many people that are in that moment of they don't know, injuries happen. Even you try to do everything right and things do happen. And I think that did show your true character, though, trying to get through it and then figuring out a way. And it is, hindsight is 2020. You can look back and go, look at all these learning lessons. But it was, I think, important. I know it was probably very hard to share that during, but for those that are watching and seeing, because like to everyone, you were pretty incredible and you do all these amazing things, but to see your vulnerability and to see that, we all have those things, that I think is really empowering to others to think that they could get through something hard too. So I really appreciate that was touching. That was, I know, hard, but so what do you feel like your biggest lessons have been from that?
Actually, I was just reflecting on this last night with a friend that is going through some rough health stuff right now. And she's like, how did you get through it? And there was a couple back and forth in our conversation. And I remember one point, something she said last night triggered a memory for me. I remember being in the garage trying to have manual doors, trying to lift up the door. And my back was just letting me know, like talking and screaming in all directions. And instead of what I would have thought my normal reaction would have been, like cursing or dropping the door or something, just a reaction to the pain, I was like using other parts of my body and figuring out how to get the door open. And I said out loud, what do I have to learn here? And it was like somebody else was like speaking through me, like there's something to learn through this pain, like whether it's taking a pause, not stacking your schedule so much, asking for help, like what are all the things that I am having to learn as I go through this. And so talking to her last night brought up some of those memories. So that's interesting that you bring that up now. So that would probably be the big one. What do I have to learn here? And
Yeah.
have that presence of mind to say that, and not, I mean, I was mad at the situation, don't get me wrong, but like just looking for what there was to learn, like that was what got me through it, I think, is learning along the way.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it's changed how you do things?
I'd like to think so, as I'm like pretty frantic right now trying to get checking up
Get
ready.
ready.
But
You're
like
not
looking at the bigger picture of the calendar.
you're not going to go on a trip to hike 200 miles or hopefully have your house broken into. Like, you did have a lot happening. Like,
Yeah, and some of those circumstances come up with us, and it's just how do we tend to move through them. And I feel like I had myself pretty well handled.
mm-hmm.
But then the one that's out of control, the house being broken into, was what kind of did me in.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, who knows, had that not happened, would I have sailed through? But I think there was something to learn there. And if I guess were to point it out, it's like, it's my job to keep myself grounded and not running the red line. And I guess I'm really good at running right up against the red line and seeming like I can hold it all together. But then that one little thing happens, or big thing, and I don't have any more bandwidth or resiliency in that moment because of how I've pushed myself up to it. So I'd like to think that I'm finding ways to keep all this stuff going, but then having my own pullbacks so that I don't break at one point, whether it's physically or emotionally. I want to be in control of that reaction, not be so close to the edge.
So maybe not riding that red line quite as closely as well. And that was probably a different circumstance, and absolutely something out of your control had happened, which does happen, right? In our lives. So whether we like it or not, we can't control everything, but we can control how we respond. And I like that you were looking for something to learn, because instead of just getting angry, and you were angry and you had moments, it's all a grieving process, but you weren't, like, that wasn't your main thing. You were looking for something to learn. So do you feel like you're like emotionally stronger because of it?
Sometimes I think what it's related to, there's other pieces of life that are still challenging for sure. I guess that's something that I would like to have learned better along the way. Like, I hear a lot of runners say like what they learn on the trail translates to life. I was never that good at that. Like, I was really resilient and patient and like a smart racer and that. And then I could see where those things could have helped in life along, especially the patience one. And those didn't always translate over to life for me. So I think I'm still trying to like have those lessons go back and forth, like what I learned in life apply to running, and what I've learned in running apply to life, and not be so, I have such a literal brain. That's probably one of my strengths and weak points.
Something to work on for sure. But so do you have any like I know when people experience trauma, do you feel like that was like a traumatic experience in the sense, having somebody break into your home that was just new? How, that's a traumatic experience. So like, do you feel like sometimes you kind of go back in that space? Like, I know sometimes trauma, you have a, post-traumatic stress kind
of. I'm very fortunate that I surround myself with a lot of healers, and I threw everything at that back, from chiropractic to PT to massage. I work with a clairvoyant massage therapist from time to time. And so through all of these things, all the facilities and resources I have here at Prime, I really threw a lot at it. And actually, relating back to our initial topic of nutrition and fueling our bodies, I have a great sports dietitian colleague that I reach out to a lot, and he and I talked through and the reality of how much I consumed while hiking on the trail. And this is going back to, I know how to do this, I know better, but I didn't in that moment. Was he's like, you did not eat enough on that trail, and then you finished the same day we finished. We hopped on a flight like 4 hours later. So sitting on a plane, dehydrated, underfueled, like that position of sitting on a plane, bad for your back. Then driving another 2 or 3 hours to get back to Bellingham, like I kind of really compromised my back in that, and then to come home to the stress of my back. So that ties back to the nutrition piece. But in terms of the traumatic piece, I was doing like pretty well physically. I could just tell that I didn't want to mess it up again. And I was about at the 6 to 8 week mark where I feel like, I'm functional again, but one wrong move, I'm going to mess this up. And I happened to have a massage appointment with the clairvoyant massage therapist. And when she had me on the table, we were talking through my process. And she said, when you are talking about this, when you came home and were dealing with the house, you went into this superhero mode. And I did. I came home and I was like, with probably some not choice words about how no one's going to F with my house and, break into mine. I'm going to totally protect this place. And rather than feeling that victim mode and the vulnerability of having my space, like that I'd had less than, I'd barely been in it, and somebody else had decided to break through the back door and invade my space and privacy and items and take things. And when she said that, I broke down into tears on the table and just, she's like, yeah, girl, you need to feel that victim mode. Like that is what probably what I was holding on to. And I kid you not, Laura, like within a week, I was fully functional. Like my back was strong again. And so I just wonder, I truly believe we do trap things in our bodies. And I wonder if by not acknowledging that victim mode and trying to, I was guessing like stuff it down so that I could take care of my house and, I have this like stance, like hands on hips, like super powerful, like, no, you actually have to feel all the feels. And by thankfully going through that with her, that's what allowed my back to fully heal. And I would say, within, I've been fully functional since. Like I have not had any setbacks. I've definitely tested it in terms of like getting back to full weightlifting and training and all of that, and hadn't not had any problem moving stuff around the house, doing yard work, like all the things that you have to be careful with your back. I do feel fully functional.
Wow. I think you're right. I think we physically hold on to emotional things. And if you allow yourself to, there's an amount of like, not necessarily even the victim mode, but there's an amount of vulnerability that we have to accept, to allow others like it allows us. I just did a podcast on like friendship, and that's part of what friendship, a deeper connection to, like sharing those vulnerabilities and the risk, but it's also shows an element of trust. And I think that happens within ourselves, saying we are afraid sometimes to feel an uncomfortable feeling because it's uncomfortable to feel like a victim, right? And just cry it out and just feel that. Allow yourself to feel all the feels, all the emotions, and then it does let you move on. Like, I'm so glad we talked about this because it's, we're so physical and tactile as runners and athletes, but there's so much that goes into it emotionally as well. And it's okay to be vulnerable. And yeah, we want to put it in every element. We are superheroes. In a lot of ways we can be, but there's kind of a yin yang to life. Like there's a balance of being vulnerable, being fearful, but not letting fear stop us, but recognizing that that's there, but still, doing it anyway, even though it's hard. But sometimes if we're holding on to some of those, resentment or pain or those things, it can prevent us mentally from doing the things that we need to do, which physically heals us, if that makes sense. Like you were talking about. I think this is such a good illustration, I think.
Oh, I agree.
I liked what you said too, because you talked about, like, I guess what hit me in my mind was what I teach my clients this is to create an environment for success. And you immediately did that. You said, okay, I'm going to talk to my dietitian friend about this. I'm going to have my clairvoyant massage therapist. I'm talking to physical therapists. I'm going to different doctors. You didn't put all your eggs in one basket. You diversified, and you created this environment around you that allowed you to figure things out. Just kind of wait for there's so many times people just listen to one voice of what's going on with them instead of really like figuring it out with lots of different, I don't know, modalities. You know what I mean? They limit them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really smart. And that you can set out to do that for yourself. So, people listening in that, it's smart to have, like, I know the athletes I work with, if they have eating disorders, I highly encourage them to work with a dietitian. If they've had injuries,
Mm-hmm.
them to do what their physical therapist said. If they're experiencing other pains and things, I want them to go to the doctor. Like, we'll all work together to help them achieve their success that they want. I think it's important to listen to a lot of ideas on that.
Mm-hmm. And go back to that, like what resonates with you and works for you. Like pull information from people and then see how it plays in, works for you.
Yeah, everybody's different, and I like that.
Mm-hmm.
It opens people's ideas. The idea that no, you don't have to just be limited to what one person says, or
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and don't be afraid to ask. I know people that I work with, and you being a coach as well. I'm sure you encourage your athletes, like, ask me why I'm having you do that workout, because I'm happy to explain it. I want them,
Mm-hmm.
I want them to learn and ask, and so I can explain it, and I know where they're at with their understanding. And then sometimes, I mean, I don't know. I'm sure I would expect that you've learned over the years all that you've done. I learn a lot from my athletes. So,
Oh,
yeah,
100%. I love those relationships for that, both
absolutely.
in life and as it relates to running.
Yeah. I think you never, even if I mean, I would consider you an expert in this field. You've written a book and you've obviously had a lot of experience, but I think it's so valuable to still continue like learning. I know. And that's one of the things
Mm-hmm.
I like about you is that you're not like, oh, I'm all knowing. And, you're very
Mm-mm.
much a student of this. And ultra running, I mean, would you say, what are the changes that you've seen in the ultra running since you started as to now?
Sorry, what the question is, what have I
what
seen?
what has changed, like, not only in you, but like, I know for me in running, like when I started running like in high school and then through college and then now, there's a lot of differences of what they do now,
Mm.
distance running and road running and triathlon versus like what like the ultra world.
Mm-hmm. I would say, like, oh, I guess there's a lot of differences just in how the sport of ultra running is like seen in the world. It was this weird, like, small collection of people, and now it's, they're figuring out ways to broadcast it and do live streaming. Like, talk about a change in the sport.
Mm,
Sponsorships were footwear and a jersey, and now there's salaries that people can live off involved, and there's been some amazing transitions there. And I think the messaging around all of it, who can do it, seeing just the shift from most, like, when I got into the sport, I said I ran with the guys, there was very few women, and now those numbers are slowly, but they're changing. And the people that are coming to the sport, representation on lots of fronts, like opening doors that way, I think it's beautiful. I really hope we see more of that.
mhm. I think it will continue to grow. I've seen a lot of that as well, and I think that's great. I think, well, I don't know about you, but I know for me, running and like the physical exertion is very emotionally healthy for me. It's therapy for me, really. Um, I know
I agree. Yeah.
a lot of my trail runner friends, we talk about that. I run with a lot of lady friends, and we talk about how it just makes us feel so much better, just handling a life and getting out in nature and just, oh, it's just so nice to get on the trails.
Mm-hmm. Breathe hard, sweat it out, process mentally. Yep. I'm with you, ladies. I'm with ya.
Yeah, I seem to think clearer. Like when I'm done with a run, like I am much more productive with what I do. A lot of people I work with are beginners, and so just teaching them that how when they start doing it, they start realizing, wow, how could I have lived without this for so many years? But
Mm-hmm.
I did want to talk about your book because I'm a huge fan. I think, I mean, really, if I wrote a book on ultra running, it would be very similar to your book because I just like your approaches, and we both agree that like everybody is a little bit different. But I like how you structure it as it's super easy to follow. It's really so. Tell me more about. I know that this is your second edition. I don't know what changes you made to the book. Just let's talk about it a little more so people listening in, if they want, it's a great resource. I'm a big believer in following a plan or having a coach. Tell us about it.
The getting to write the first one was such a gift. I came to coaching with with a athlete that reached out to me actually and said, "Hey, I think you should coach me. I'm new at this and I want to learn from you." And that continues to be the personality type I'm drawn to in terms of it's going to help your people have you or work with you to have a system to running. How over the years I've become more like in line with that messaging. You know, I felt it, but now it's like the strong line through. I would say through all the I get to work with, and I really love that. And the book reflects relation. I think what was really cool in the second edition was getting to update like just the way we think about the sport change in the like from writing to writing. It was about 5 years. And like, I just remember like a simple one in terms of gear, talking about how you might want to take a phone, a camera, a GPS device, like all these things, maps. And now you can just take one item that covers all of those things. Like, and then the language about, I had a chapter in there that was specifically for women. And it's like, we're trail runners, period. We can all read about relative energy deficiency. We can all read about periods. We can all read about sports bras. Like we don't need a special chapter just to call out for women. And I mean, really from 5 years of writing that was like things like that became significant enough to change. I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's changed in the technology. I know technology in training itself, like heart rate monitor. And do you do any of that kind of training yourself, the heart rate kind of stuff?
You know, I did. And I feel like what I did with that was to learn how the numbers associated to like relative energy, like how I felt, perceived exertion, I guess is the word I was looking for there. And I actually just got to do some muscle testing with a physical therapist here at Prime Sports Institute, Sean Fife. And it was really cool to see how the numbers have shifted just a little in 20 years, because I did that in my mid 20s and now I'm in my mid 40s, but how the pacing is similar and what I am able to maintain 20 years later. So having that like perceived energy exertion kind of numbers marked, but I don't depend on a watch or device to tell me that. I want to know that internally. So having it kind of as a checkpoint or a touch point seems to work really well for me. And then kind of maybe coming back to it every once in a while, maybe a little more frequently than 20 years, but that's, I guess I got really honed in on how I like to train.
You know, I think it's interesting because a lot of pros, like in the tri world, they go through by RPE too. And I think part of it is they know how their body feels. And I know, like a lot of my beginners, they have no concept of what it feels like to run hard or slow. You know, I mean, generally, but that's why, you know, I give them those ranges, or I do some RPE as well. But many of them I've had to run with to show them what 100% looks like. And then they're like, oh my gosh, I do have more gears. I had no idea. Because for some reason, there's a fear they're going to die or something. And it's like, no, fine. And then when someone's confident, you know, running with them and building their confidence, I think it helps. But I think for learning, it can be very beneficial. But it's interesting as you learn your body. I also race by RPE. I do a little bit with watts on my bike, but it's interesting as you develop, you know, that ability to listen to your own body, how you can go by feel. Well, this is a pace I can't sustain, or I need to back off, or I need to speed up, you know, innately from your experience. And so I just think that's interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, is it like 100% bomb proof? No, I mean, I'm sure there's like lots of people could see cracks in that ability. Do I push too hard sometimes? Do I not run hard enough sometimes? Like all those pieces. But I think like when we look at training as a whole and not just the individual days, and we can keep that bigger picture in mind, I think that's where we're like really have the opportunity, like that winning mode where we give ourselves grace on a day where we have to miss, or an extra rest day if we push too hard, and knowing that in the big picture that's all going to even out and work out.
I think that's what I like most about because that's the same philosophy I have for coaching, is like, well, it happens, and so we be flexible, and we move things around, and we get our most important workouts in, but it doesn't mean it has to happen exactly the same for everyone. We can all be training for the same race, but we do it differently. And that's okay. And I love that you said, give yourself grace, because I don't know about you, but it seems like there's a lot of type A personalities in this sport. And they have a hard time. I have a lot of, even this morning when I went running, it's so funny because they're like, oh, there's just a little bit more to get to my, whatever round mileage, instead of they can't like stop at 0.92, or it has to be all the way to a full mile. And it's just over the years, I haven't been as anal about that as I used to be. But it's funny because it's just like a type A personality. We have a hard time like letting go. It has to happen a certain way. And I think that flexibility we learn in time. And really, I think it boils down to consistency to be a good runner, getting it in consistently. But I so appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. And any last words of advice for people listening in that want to get into this ultra world? And I know they have a lot to learn, and there is a lot to learn, but just some tips.
I guess the first one I always go to is make sure you're enjoying it, because there are, like anything in life, there are hard bits of it that not necessarily you have to push through, but just understand that's part of the process. So like checking in on the why. I think finding your why you want to get into it, and the time commitment. And another piece I would share is like communication with the people around you of what this commitment means to you, the time it might take on certain weeks, how they can best support you. I think I got into it and just kind of did it and surrounded myself with the people that got it. And I know later in life, like living in different realms and seeing that it doesn't always just work out that way, to be surrounded by like-mindedness around it. There was a great article I thought in the Trail Runner magazine online site yesterday about relative to love related to Valentine's Day. And it was about people that are partnered with non-runners. So runners that are partnered with non-runners, and the advice that the non-runner of the partnership gave. I just thought that's such great awareness of like how those relationships play out when there's somebody so driven by something that takes so much time, whether it's running or likewise. But in this article, it was related to running, so I obviously related to it. I thought that was a good like reminder of the communication necessary for the people that are close to you.
Yeah, because they may not, and I've found I've had people in my life that aren't runners, and they don't understand it. And I could explain it till I'm blue in the face. They're not going to understand it. But yeah, I mean, these are things that are important to me, but they're also important to me. And so you do have to make the time for those relationships as well. So that's a good thing open communication. Good tip.
Yeah.
Anything else you would share?
I would just queue us up for another potential podcast that I would love to talk to you about. If I don't have my own podcast, we could do on your channel, is about going through perimenopause as an athlete. I would love to tap into what your experience was, what resources you used. Well, I'm in the thick of it, and I would love to open that conversation up.
Okay, yes, we will. Because it is embracing those changes that happen to our body, and it's nice to like talk to people that have been through it, or obviously I've been through it, and there are things I might have done a little bit better, I think, knowing in retrospect. And I think it is hard to find information for just dealing with it anyway, but dealing with it as an athlete, and as an athlete that wants to perform, and now as an athlete that would like to continue to perform well, is so I don't want to say, okay, I'm old now. I don't want to just do good for my age still. I want to do well as an athlete, period. So, it is a process, but I would love to talk about that. I think that would be good. So we'll have to schedule that out. And yeah, I would love to talk to you again. I really enjoyed it. We've done many interviews now, but I love
There's always more topics.
yeah, always more topics, and there's so much to cover, and hopefully people are learning, and as we get questions too, we can certainly cover those as well. But again, love talking to you. Always love talking to you.
Thanks, Laura. Yeah, likewise.
Yeah.
I'll jump on these anytime.
Yes, awesome. Well, have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Healthy Living Podcast. Be sure and check the show notes for resources or links that we mentioned in the show. You can also find them on my website at blonderunner.com. BLONDERUNNER.com. You can also find me on Instagram at The Blonde Runner with an E, and Coach Laura Erickson, and that's LORA. Before you forget, I hope that you will follow this podcast and like it so you don't miss an episode. Also, it really helps if you leave a review so other people can find it, and share it with your friends. Until next time, live well.